The History Things podcast is brought to you by TR Historical, your one-stop shop for all your historical fan gear needs. Visit trhistorical.com and use the promo code HISTORYTHINGS to receive 10% off your next purchase. Thanks for listening. Now let's start the show.
Are you ready?
What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Season 3 Mid-Year Review History Things podcast coming to you live from the War Department studio. We're very excited to be at the halfway point of the third season. When we started this a few years back, we couldn't even imagine this moment. We're so pumped to be here and grateful for everything that you guys, our listeners, have done to support us, help us grow and get to this point. So we figured, as is pretty customary on the show, that when we get to the halfway point and to the end of the season, we like to take a look back, take some stock, review some things, and then give you an update on what's been happening with us here. But before we get into any of that, Matt, I got to get something off my chest, dude.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, it's really actually been pissing me off. So I started a new job, and
Right.
we'll get into that in a minute here. But, part of my commute is driving on 70, which is not new for me. I usually take Interstate 70, but for the last almost decade or so of my life, I've been heading on 70 East most days. I've been driving out to the Forbidden City of Baltimore, because you know how we feel. The day we were recording this right now, Matt and I were in Baltimore today, and Matt was watching me have real-time anxiety and road rage.
Yeah.
Like, God, I hate driving through that city. Love a lot of the people in the city, but the city is just ridiculous. So we're not here to gripe about Baltimore. What I'm here to gripe about, Matt, is my new commute is on 70 West.
Correct.
And so I jump all the way out, like almost an hour past Frederick. And what I have discovered in that commute that seems to be very different than my former 70 East commute is that there's an absolutely obnoxious amount of people that do the speed limit or below and sit in the all the way left lane.
I could see that.
It literally takes the wind out of my sails. Like, I get to what is now my dream job, right? And again, we'll get into that in a second, but I get out there and I'm at like 98%. Normally I'm like, I'm going to the thing I was born to do. But like 2% shine comes off because I have to sit behind probably 50 jabronis between Carroll County, Maryland and Big Pool, Maryland. And I don't understand it. It's dangerous. So, public appeal. If you, one of our great listeners, find yourself doing this ridiculous thing where you are driving the speed limit or below in the left lane, it's for passing. Get out of the left lane. Get in the right lane. You'll do the exact same thing you're doing in the left lane, except you won't be pissing people off. Whew, I needed to get that off my out of my
Just
system.
breathe.
It's okay. And I know that, so this is a safe space, and that's why we do this, because our listeners are amazing, and I know they'll understand. So thank you very much, History Things audience. We appreciate you. But what does that mean? I've said it a few times, but I have a new job. So what am I doing now, Matt? We've teased it.
Oh, yes. We've teased it quite a bit, and we can definitely say it, because we are super proud of you, bud.
You say it.
My co-host, Pat McGuire, is now Ranger McGuire out there at Fort Frederick State Park for the Maryland State Park System.
I shock and awed my way into the business finally.
Yep, he is part of the business. He is in the history community officially as part of his job. We're super proud of you, bud.
Thank you, bud. You have inspired me for years. You have pushed me, and you have definitely helped develop me professionally, and not just to do the show together, which, if it hasn't been said on the air before, short story, when I proposed this idea to Matt, in fact, even before I proposed this idea to Matt, I already sort of understood his vibe, which was, if you're ever going to work with me, you got to be on your game, got to be professional, definitely got to come with the heavyweight stuff. And so,
and that went out the window when we started this show.
We have gravitas, dude. We have a good time, but hopefully you're all learning stuff. But my point is I knew that even before we sat down and discussed the show. And so I was already kind of background working on my game. And then I felt it got to a point where it's pretty good, and we sat down and talked about the show. One of the first things you said was we need to do X, Y, and Z to kind of like establish my maturity. Let's be honest, it was my maturity. But, we launched the show, and it was great. And Matt and I have been working together for a long time, but that sort of development, that, that push that you give me, and you never stop. And an opportunity came up to make a huge life leap, because nobody gets rich working in the history field, right?
Exactly, and it takes courage to make that shift. And you did. You took a major shift from what you were doing, working.
Let's say
contracting and construction.
Yeah, let's say in black and white terms, I was making good money as a
contractor. You're making bank. That's right.
And
exactly.
I am not anymore.
Right.
But my soul is happy. My wife is happy. My kiddos are happy. And at the end of the day, I realized that. What do they call this? The great resignation that's been going on over the last 2 years. Like, I accidentally became a part of it. One day I realized I was living somebody else's dream, and I was making myself sick over it and wearing myself out. And, the money was great. And in addition to you, I had another friend who was in a position to give me an opportunity, basically take a risk, because I now reflect on him and his stellar reputation in the Park Service. Mr. Rob Ambrose, who has been a guest here on the show.
Yep,
he's now my boss out at Fort Frederick State Park, but he took a chance, and I'm pumped, man. I've been living my dream. I work in this field. I get to tell historic stories at a really cool site. You've heard all about Fort Frederick on the show, but it's a French and Indian war fort. It's a British Revolutionary War prisoner of war camp. For the British prisoners that are held there. It's the location of a Civil War battery and a couple skirmishes during the American Civil War. There's a free African-American family that operates a successful farm, does a lot for Washington County African-American education. And then the Civilian Conservation Corps. I have so much to talk about, and it's like, that's what I do. Like, I get paid to do that now, and it's like, this is my dream. But now the 2%, knockoff makes sense, because I'm on my way every morning jacked to live this dream, and then these jackasses live in the left lane, and I'm like, but then I get to the Ford, and it's all good, brother. But so I am now a historic park ranger. I'm very excited, and I have a immense debt to you, my friend and partner across the table from me here. Thank you so very much for believing in me and kicking my ass in the line when it needed to be done, bud. So,
well, I'm happy to do the kicking, but
yes,
Pat,
you are.
Pat, you also implied another big announcement on your front, and I think our listeners want to know.
Yeah, and it kind of goes in with the kicking, because right now my wife is having the insides of her tummy kicked by a very small little girl who will be born sometime in mid-August. So from the time this comes out, just a few short weeks, I will be blessed with another little girl, which, is amazing. And I've been joking, my daughter that's here right now, Evelyn, is essentially a copy and paste of my wife. My wife is amazing, but my wife is, she's the boss. We'll just say that.
Danielle's awesome.
And now there's this 3.5-year-old little boss in the house. And all I can foresee is that I have now surrounded myself with copy, paste, and paste now. And it's going to be absolute chaos. All the white that is all the color that is in my beard will now be replaced with white. It's already happening.
Oh, yeah, it is.
And the 4 hairs on my head that still grow will no longer show themselves. But yeah, I'm growing my family. I'm very excited about it. I try to keep a lot of the details, of my personal life off the air, just because it is my personal life, and you do have to make a line. You got to live on one side of the line or the other kind of thing. But family is a big part of my life. It's not something I've ever shied away from here on the show. We kind of have a mantra here: family first, always. So, new girls, pumped, man. Like, I have another little girl to turn into a small fierce, as we call Evelyn. My 3-year-old has a better grasp of the Lord of the Rings than a lot of other people, so I get to do that with another kid now.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Spread that nerd love.
So I'm so very excited about that. We also have some things from you, buddy, coming hot off the presses here. I understand. I heard from my contacts, my people, my contacts in the publishing world, that there's something new on the horizons from Matt Borders' books.
There is indeed.
Hit us with it.
The 3rd book in the Faces of Union Soldiers series is going to be published on June 20th, 2022. So this summer.
What's this book on?
This is Faces of Union Soldiers at Fredericksburg.
Fredericksburg! That's the best part of the movie of Gettysburg, honestly, is that one dude on the wall who's clearly overdubbed audio-wise, but God, he was freaking into it. So
It's true.
people are going to be that into your book, dude.
Well, I hope so. We've been very blessed this time around. Not only did Joe and I were we able to complete this book in time for the 160th commemoration of the Battle of Fredericksburg, which is what's happening this fall, but we actually have the historian of Chancellorsville, Spotsylvania National Military Park writing the foreword.
Ooh,
Yeah.
pulling in the big guns. You want to name drop there real quick?
That's Frank O'Reilly. He's actually wrote the foreword for the book. And,
Big Frank.
yeah.
We had an interesting...
We ran into Frank.
We ran into Frank when we were on our little live expedition to Fredericksburg.
Right, with Avery.
Had a good moment there. In front of one of the mega guys of our industry, I poo-pooed all over Stonewall Jackson, and I got a very terse response.
You did. You absolutely did.
Thanks for being cool about it, though, Frank. I appreciate that. So that's awesome that you got to work with him. He's a fantastic writer and an amazing historian. And,
Absolutely.
his work at Fredericksburg, Spots and Chansey is just kind of off the chart. So looking forward to that. I get a copy of that book, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Can I get you to sign it?
Yeah.
I mean, can Joe sign it first and Vicar? I'm just kidding.
Yes, we can make that happen.
Dude, I'm so excited. So obviously, we are huge fans of Matt. You know, we just spent a little bit talking about how Matt was, very awesome over the years, pumping me up and things. But I love talking about your work. I'm such a fan of your storytelling on the battlefields, your storytelling through writing. You and Joe work incredibly well together. Your first two books on Antietam and South Mountain Harper's Ferry were amazing, dude. I tell people all the time, if you need a book, you want to follow the experience of the men on the field, take these right out on the field. They're awesome.
Well, that's what we're trying to do.
Where can they get them?
They'll actually be able to be found wherever books are sold. I know that's cliche, but
Yeah,
of course.
it's hella cliche. Tell us, name drop the big brands.
Well, obviously, it's going to be at Barnes & Noble. It'll be at the shop there at Fredericksburg. We're also trying to get it in some of the local stores down that way. And, of course, there's Amazon or pulling it off the History Press website itself.
Do you think that with Borders Books being out of business at this point, there's an opportunity for you in there somewhere?
Well, I was going to say, you're also more than welcome to DM me directly at Matt Borders Books, and I can definitely send you a copy.
Do that. Copies are $87.
Yeah. No, they are definitely not.
They are definitely a super affordable book full of amazing information. So we are huge fans, and we are incredibly proud that you have been an author of now 3 books. Basically, we're doing a book a season right now.
Pretty much, yeah.
Are we setting a standard for you? Are you going to be able to do this as we do this?
Not quite a book a season, but it's close to that. And we are, of course, already in talks about doing number 4. So we'll see what happens.
Awesome. We're in talks about doing a season number. So you know what I'm saying,
Well, I'll keep you informed. And of course, you, our listeners, I'll also keep informed as to how those talks progress. And we are already planning for number 4 here, I believe.
Oh, that's right. We are. Yes. No, I mean, we can let that cat out of the bag. Matt and I, at the beginning of the launch of the show way back, decided, this would be kind of a year-to-year thing. We'd see how we feel. But right now, we've just kind of admitted we're just going to do it until there's a reason not to do it. So there's definitely going to be a season 4. Who knows about a season 5? We're just going to be a season 5 unless something nuclear catastrophic takes place with, the world, which we'll get into the world a little later. It's freaking depressing, and I don't want to focus on that. Instead, I want to focus on the fun we have had here on the first half of season 3. We've had some amazing guests. First, before I do that, I'm going to hit the unmute button. I'm going to take our producer Parker out of the penalty box over there.
That's right.
Parker is good for a laugh, especially right as we're about to hit record. So I have to hit the mute button and put him in the sin bin, as they call it in hockey. 2 minutes hilarity. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show, our producer Parker Russell. How you doing, buddy?
We're pretty good.
You step out gently, sir.
It's really here. Can I go back in the penalty box?
Yeah, it's safer in there for you, bud.
Sounds like we beat him or something.
No, we do.
It's really funny. You actually said that, just throw the police off the trail.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're like, no, they don't. They're clearly joking.
I'm totally fine. Everything is happy.
Matt, get the shovels in case he messes up tonight.
right.
We just got to end this one. So, no, Parker has obviously joined our show officially at the end of last season. He also was a guest on our show. There's a common theme. We like to work with our friends and colleagues, and we like to, the rising tide lifts us all. Our show was getting a little bigger, and we needed some help. And
nepotism.
Yes, nepotism for sure. We definitely are hiring our
And
friends here.
With me here, your show is actually a lot bigger, like just volume.
Ooh,
We
wow.
displace more water.
That is
now.
self-deprecating humor. Well, that's an apt joke from a Titanic guy.
I was gonna
The
say-
guy who loves big ships.
That's very true.
May you have more fortunes than your idle ship there, my friend.
Thank you.
But Parker joined the show at the end of season 2 officially, and as I was saying, likewise, as a guest, had been a guest on the show. He was all the way back in season 1. He helped us get off the ground, gave us our White Star Line episode, which I still am a huge fan of.
Absolutely.
When I talk about all the old hits, if we were putting together a classic rock of old hits, greatest hits right now, man, White Star would be on there. But
It'd be like Indigada Vita because it's like the longest.
yes, I mean, have we decided, is that the longest?
It
Close.
might be longest for single shot. I don't think it's longest overall.
Like Cycle has to be John Brack.
I was gonna say, I believe that's John.
I mean, he gave us 2 borderline 5-hour bangers.
Exactly.
I mean, I'm sure a number of our listeners are
still tired from
on
that
the
one.
Western Front. Yes, and they are slogging through Verdun. Like, Jesus, all we do is get shelled on both sides of the Muz. Like, yes, no, that was such a great episode. I have listened to that several times, just trying to take it in from the listener perspective. And I'm not going to toot our own horn. I hope you guys are impressed with that as I am when I listen. I mean, John is thorough.
Yeah.
Like, thorough is not a good enough description. Like, that was one of the best retellings of a single unit history I've ever heard in any war. So
Consummate historian.
yeah, so make sure you get out there and check out his book, The Verdun Regiment, the 151. So we're always trying to lift up our friends here. But Parker has been instrumental in helping season 3 progress as smoothly as it has.
Absolutely. Has.
So we wanted it mid-year here to make sure that now that he's part of the show, that he gets out of the penalty box. What is the movie Matilda? The Chokey?
That was creepy.
Mhm.
The movie Matilda scares you?
Yes.
What
Yeah.
about the movie scares you? I mean,
The whole
the
thing.
Principal
I would-
Trunchbull
All
scares
right.
me. She was terrifying.
Yeah. Well,
Have you even seen the movie?
actually, you know what?
The answer is no.
Full disclosure, I was scared by the children's. Those
What?
Books, yeah, those books actually.
Are you reading
scared
some
me.
different Matilda?
To be perfectly honest, I thought he was confusing Matilda with Caroline.
No, there was something about it. There was something about those books as a kid.
Parker's like, I actually don't know how to read,
Maybe-
guys. So thanks for bringing all this up.
Yeah, maybe it was the fact that my mother read it to me like, "This is Matilda."
Wow, that is
it's
nothing like the story.
I don't know. I have no
jeez.
idea. I have no idea what about.
All
it.
right.
Just
Well,
freaked
I'm
me
sure.
out.
So here's what I want out of all of our listeners out there who are so awesome at supporting what we do. Reach out and comment on posts, hashtag make Parker watch Matilda. Parker needs to watch us. Here's challenge to you. We're going to get to our year-end review, and I'm going to ask you if you've watched the movie yet. And you're
Okay.
going to get a 3-question quiz on it.
All right.
And it's going on record in our mid-year right now, so I will not forget it.
If our listeners want it, then I'll do it.
Oh, they want it.
I'm
They're
glad to see it.
the phone lines are lighting up right now, right
You
here
have
in the
phone
studio.
lines?
Our imaginary live phone call board it's
Wait.
lit up. I got caller 10. What do you want? Oh, Parker to watch Matilda?
But
Done.
Wait a minute. You have a phone line?
Yeah.
Does that mean I have to man those too?
Yeah, eventually.
Yes, it does.
All right,
Yeah,
guys. I'll be
eventually.
right back.
So we wanted to bring Parker on. So as we went back sort of down memory lane and talked about where we've been in season 1, we can make sure to include a guy who's been instrumental in helping it all be possible. So Matt, let's get started here in quarter 1. In quarter 1, we went to the Outer Banks.
One of your favorite places.
The beach. It's many people's favorite places. You guys got to get. Parker's actually been down there. This is one of the things I can say. Parker has. It's not on his list of to dos. Parker has been to the Outer Banks.
I've been to the Outer Banks.
Matt, you need to get
I'm
to the
even
Outer
wearing a
Banks.
shirt right
I've-
now that says Outer Banks on. Check that out.
Oh man, he is. Look at that.
Yeah.
Win.
I've been to part of the Outer Banks. I've not been to your part of the Outer Banks.
What part have you been to?
South of that.
I don't know what that means.
I can't remember the name of
You
the
mean
island.
the ocean?
Shut up.
Were you like in Cape Fear,
No, the really fancy island.
Duck, Kerala? There's a lot of money up there. Emerald Island. Yeah. No, I'm talking Cape Hatteras National Seashore, baby.
And like I said, I've not been there. I was surveying some stuff at that other island, though. I was not there as a guest.
Surveying? What are you, like Indiana Jones?
I was when I was doing that part of my Park Service job.
That's awesome. What were you surveying?
I was actually looking into some of the fighting along the coastline there.
Find anything cool?
No, we were mostly looking at landscape stuff. And
Your
of course,
head nod to the side immediately depressed me. I was like, the answer is going to be not cool.
Well, the point that was made with quarter one, with how much the Outer Banks have changed and the Sea Islands have changed, that's exactly what happened.
Oh, so it kind of messed up surveying because everything is different now.
Right, exactly.
All right, excuses, but I feel that. You're right. But, sorry, so back on track. We had a great time, right? I definitely wanted to do this episode because I do have a personal connection to it. My father does live down there. I've spent many years of my life tramping all over its beaches, getting into trouble in a number of its back cut places, but then along the way, finding every random historical story that I possibly could. And I figured out that I have a podcast now, that this is a great place to tell some of those stories to people who might not likely get down there. So we talked to, Josh Nunemacher, who at the time was the museum administrator. And he spent some time kind of highlighting,
For which museum, Pat?
The graveyard. Did I forget that?
Correct.
Dude, I am just... We spent a good amount of time talking to Josh Nunemacher of the Graveyard of the Atlantic Museum, which is right there if you get on Highway 12 South. There's only one road on the Outer Banks, so even if you pick it up like 60 miles north in Kitty Hawk, just keep going south, you're going to run into the museum. Literally, the highway ends right at a ferry/museum. So go to the museum. Don't get on the ferry unless you want to go to Ocracoke, great island, but go to the museum. But Josh was on, and he gave us a sort of 30,000-foot view of sort of a bunch of different stories on the island. We talked about pirates. We talked about Titanic's connection, which was, I know, Parker, that was a big highlight of that episode for you, wasn't it?
Yeah, I had no interest in that whatsoever.
Had you known that there were connections that far away?
No, I didn't actually. You're the one who actually told me about that, and it really enriched the story for me. It's a small part, but it actually had so much that much larger.
It's like 1,000 miles that radio signal travels, and they're like among the first to get it.
Well, and I love the fact that they actually have the copy,
and they found it inside of a wall.
Exactly. Yeah. The whole story behind the copy of that. What is it? A telegram?
Yeah. Well,
it's like the official telegram of
Marconi.
The weather. Yeah.
A wireless. That's right.
Yeah.
It's a wireless. But yeah, the official copy of that wireless and where it wound up and in the wall and then finding it later. That was a fantastic story. So we very much appreciate Josh coming on and talking to us about that.
Yeah, and we were looking forward to having him on, but we had one of our first sort of interesting scheduling experiences. Josh was like I am right now, was growing his family, having some new babies being born. He also got an opportunity to take a position at another site and had to move on before we could book him for the follow-up, which was interestingly stressful in a way. We were very excited for him, obviously, personally and professionally. Those are both like good news, awesome things. But, for us at the show, he meant he wasn't allowed to talk about the museum anymore.
Right.
Because we had him on as the official museum administrator. So it put us in sort of a weird spot. But, Matt, I'm a baseball guy, right? And I love teaching with analogies. So what did we have? We had a pinch hitter. And we had the Miss Mary Ellen Riddle, who was the, director of interpretation for the museum down there. But she stepped in and sort of picked up where Josh had left off and allowed us to get into some of those stories that Josh talked about in a deeper way. Pun and no pun intended, Titanic guy over there. But, we talked a lot about the Civil War on the island. We talked about the Wright brothers. To an extent, they were mentioned, but they weren't the focus because obviously that doesn't happen on Hatteras Island specifically. We talked about Blackbeard, and I'm a huge pirate guy, so that was cool. So, the Titanic part was weirdly my favorite part of probably the cycle too, Parker. So before we get into that, Matt, let's start with you. Like, what are some of your favorite takeaways from the first quarter cycle? Just some of the things that you really love.
Well, it's one of those things where the museum's called the Graveyard of the Atlantic. So, you're talking about shipwrecks, but it was very interesting to hear how it's almost as if there are ships on top of ships on top of ships out there because there are so many wrecks just off that part of the Atlantic coast.
I think they said like 5,000.
Something like that, exactly.
It's absurd.
It is. And the ties to the 20th century with the life-saving service. I really enjoyed that conversation, learning about those guys and the work that they would be doing in the early 20th century, and then, of course, into the 2 world wars. Obviously, we hear a lot about the submarines being just off the coast in World War II. Well, they're there in World War I as well.
Like a generation before. How
Right.
wild would it be to stand on the beach and like watch these ships go up,
Right.
knowing that the terrifying German U-boats are out there. They're like not even mythologically out there. They are literally right there.
Mm-hmm. That's
me.
really what kind of drew me in on that episode, that quarter.
Yeah, I was really into that. Parker, was I on the money with you, buddy? Was the Titanic part your favorite part of that?
Actually, almost.
Ooh, I mean, that
almost.
would be on brand, but I
That
love
would
being
be on-
wrong.
That would be on brand. I actually really enjoyed the stuff that she brought to the table about the Blackbeard stuff, because of course we hear so much about Blackbeard and all this kind of like fable stuff. Sometimes it's hard to forget or hard to remember that he's actually like a real guy.
Edward Teach.
Edward Teach, or
Thatch.
Thatch,
Teach Thatch.
which was
Thatch.
which is one of the things that I thought was really interesting, is because every time you think you know just about everything there is to know about a guy, or you learn something new. Like maybe we don't even know how to pronounce his name correct.
Right, Teach
So
Thatch.
it's hard. It's going to be hard for me though to not call him Edward Teach. But
I agree.
But I honestly, the Titanic thing was amazing. I loved that. I love that thing. But the Blackbeard stuff she brought to the table was
I think
amazing.
Teach is definitely his last name.
That's
good
what
money.
I've always gone with too.
I mean, the majority of the historical references to him use Teach.
Yeah.
I mean, Thatch gets used, which is why we have to throw it in the ring. But
Mhm.
Yeah.
Teach gets used more overwhelmingly. For me, I mentioned that the Titanic one was my favorite. It's my second favorite as well.
Yeah.
I think my favorite thing that actually happened right at the end of Josh's episode in the first, in the January episode of the first cycle was he right at the end, he mentioned the shipwreck, a 1937 steamship wreck right off the Wimble Shoals part of the Outer Banks. It was called the SS Home.
Mm-hmm.
And I had never heard of that ship. So after we were recording, and because we didn't get into it, he just kind of off the cuff mentioned it. I looked into the story of the steamship, and I was like, this is incredible. It's kind of right in line with the Titanic experience. It's a ship, has a bunch of terrible things happen to it, major loss of life, huge advancements in safety legislation for ocean and river travel after that. Kind of like, with Titanic, with SOLAS, safety of life at sea and things like that. So I was like, if we've already kind of got a brand for talking about shipwrecks in this way, this would be a really cool one to try to tell the story of. And we had floated the idea where you and I tell stories from time to time.
Right.
I thank you for laughing at that. That was an accidental pun, but I appreciate that you caught it.
I didn't even pick up on it.
My job is to laugh awkwardly at your jokes.
That's like when all right, you better laugh better than that. But that's when we, Parker always laughs when I accidentally use, we're getting into Titanic. I'm like, not to get too deep on the subject. And he's like, yeah, exactly. But the steamship Home was just fascinating to me. And we had floated the idea of you and I telling stories ourselves, not necessarily having a guest for every little episode, but sometimes we want to tell a story. And so we did a demo run. It was really successful. It featured some different storytelling, more narrative based. It's still conversational, but I wrote out a script, so to speak, and just kind of wanted to make sure I told you a real cohesive story. We added some sound effects, and it did really well. It was something we're looking forward to doing again. Matt is up next when we get to that subject, so look out in the future. At some point, we're going to be dropping a absolutely unannounced episode, a true bonus episode. But that will come from Matty B next. But yeah, that was cool. And it did a lot better than I thought it was going to do because, we are a show that heavily features input from our guests. Typically, they are the lead, but this was one where we decided to do where we were the lead on it. We were the only people.
Yep. And it tied in really well to the overall theme of the quarter. So
absolutely. From being the graveyard of the Atlantic, we didn't get too deep into, there it is, Parker. We didn't get too deep into any of the, did you laugh? Jesus.
Was that better?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. I'm working on my nervous, awkward laughter.
Oh my God. But
we will mute you.
Yeah.
Okay. Back in the box. Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah. 2 minutes hilarity. But we didn't get into any of the shipwrecks themselves individually, and so we felt it would be a cool chance to give you one, and we looked forward to doing it. And I'll be honest, it's not going to be the last shipwreck story we tell on this show. We haven't even touched on Lusitania yet, which is big shipwrecks
Well,
slash.
we did touch on her a little bit.
Yeah, but we didn't tell, like, it's not the Lusitania story. We haven't
Correct.
done that as a show. And that is big ships and shipwrecks slash, throw the slash in there, World War One.
Right.
Which is, Matt and mine's bailiwick. We just love it. So, we'll bring you another story from the briny deep at some point in the future. But, we had a good time. But quarter one didn't end the show, buddy.
Right.
Where'd we head to next?
So quarter one was all about shipwrecks in the Atlantic coast. Quarter two was huge for the American Revolution.
It was about a different shipwreck called the United States of America.
Ouch.
Whoa.
That's more of a modern commentary, but
Wow.
Wow.
But in all seriousness, folks, for history,
reel it back, and scene.
we had a great guest, David Wood from the Concord Museum, join us for quarter two, for two showings in quarter two, actually, talking about first the shot heard round the world there at Lexington and Concord Green. I screwed that up, didn't I?
Yeah, Concord Green, Lexington Green, battles of Lexington and Concord, but just
And Concord Bridge, excuse me.
It's so weird. The baseball guy in me can, even though I know this reference historically from the beginnings of the American Revolution, whenever people say shot heard around the world, I think about Bobby Thompson's like 1950-something home run I wasn't even alive for. Giants win the pennant. See, I'm going to overdub it right now. Everybody's listening right now. Yeah, that's exactly the point I'm talking about. It's one of the most famous home run calls in history. But that's when people say shot heard around the world, my brain goes right there. But like 200 years before that.
Right?
An
Exactly.
actual shot, a bullet.
The fighting at Concord Bridge there, the shot heard around the world.
So before we get into that, Parker, tell us what that was like, because that was one of the things you were absolutely instrumental.
Yeah, you spearheaded that one.
Tell us what it was like getting David on the show here, and you just might as well tell us what it was like getting the next guest after that, because you were really the lead on talent acquisition for this entire cycle.
Yeah, absolutely. So I had an amazing interaction with the Concord Museum. The contact there, Carol, who is an absolute, just a treasure. She set us up with just an amazing storyteller, preeminent in his field, absolutely.
So how did that work? Did you just email them blind?
You know
or
something?
Do you
I
know
just
somebody
emailed
there?
them. I emailed two different people because I knew we wanted to do American Revolution. And I had two stories in mind. I had two stories in mind, two sources, actually, I should say, in mind. One of them was going straight to Concord, the Concord Museum, and I said, there's no way. They're too big. They're not going to talk to me.
Yeah, we're a wee tiny podcast here.
And then I said, you know what? I'm going to go to my hometown back in Maine. I'm going to go right outside my hometown to a little town called Castine.
Oh, I'm going to Maine.
There's a wonderful, there's a museum and a Castine Historical Society, and there's a lot of Revolutionary War history within the town. And I just reached out to them. And I said, I sent to both of them, and I said, this is what we have. We have an idea for a story. I want to know if you know anybody who could, any good storytellers who could possibly tell us the story of Lexington and Concord. And they both got back to me. They both got back to me really quickly. And Carol was amazing. And we got David Wood on, who is just just an amazing guest.
What was your reaction like when they were like, "Yeah, sure, we'll come on the show"?
I haven't processed.
You were pumped.
I was pumped. I was jumping
set that
around
up because I can tell you what it was like, dude. You were jacked.
Oh, I was. I called you guys.
Yeah,
and I was like, "We did it!"
Yeah.
We did it.
No.
You're wow. And then immediately, just like boom, right after, Castine got back to me. It was like almost, it was like back to back. And I remember what I said, gentlemen, we have a guest.
Yes.
Yep.
And the Castine folks introduced us to Pat Calloway, and another amazing storyteller who is telling the story of one of my favorite Revolutionary War stories, not just because I have an ancestor in it, but because it's an absolutely amazing story about the Battle of Penobscot Bay, Battle of Castine, whatever you want to call it.
Penobscot Expedition. I think is what it's officially called.
Penobscot. Well, yeah.
Marcus, like, I'm renaming history. This is my hometown. Damn it!
Is,
I'm the Maina here.
It's too bad we don't know anyone from there.
I know.
or anyone whose great grandfather was a general in it.
Yeah, no.
But anyway, no, they both told them these amazing stories, and David Wood is an absolute total professional who tells some of the great, just an amazing story and a great outlook on these stories as well.
And very personable.
Yeah,
that's what I appreciate.
That's the thing, and what I love about him is we talk to guests, and we love them all. We love all these guests, but I think it was Matt. I think it was you. How do you want us to address you? Do you want us to call you doctor? What do you want to? David.
Just
call me David.
Just call me David.
Don't call me, and I was like,
you're the curator of the Concord Museum.
He is a class act. And it was an honor and a privilege to work with him. And
a cool dude, because he gave me, so we're going to get into favorite moments here. And he gave me my favorite moment straight up in the first. So real quick. So we did 2 episodes with David Wood, where in cycle 1, in quarter 1, we did sort of one story, and we had 2 people, one person kind of tee it up and the next person kind of send it over the wall. Outfield reference, baby, nice. Baseball. Huh. But, it was just kind of one of those, it was 2 versions of the same story just to kind of fill it out. Here, David extended a story. So the first episode was shot around the world. We focused on the famous April 19th, 1775 day. But at the end of that day, it steamrolls right into the siege of Boston. So we had David, sorry, Mr. Woods, sir.
Not that casual.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry, Mr. Woods, sir. But no, David came back and extended the story for us, and he covered the siege of Boston. And between those 2 episodes, I can tell you right away what my favorite moment is. But
we know what your favorite moment is.
Dude, I mean, it's probably a lot of our listeners' favorite moment. It was very unexpected and very random. But Matt, when we talk about quarter 2, not including the bonus, because when we talk about Penobscot Expedition, I actually want you to tell your story, Parker, about like how we even got to that. Your family connections.
Sure.
Because it's important. I mean, that is the genesis for how that episode came to be. But Matt, let's start with you. Quarter 2 cycle, 2 episodes of David Wood. What's your moment?
Oh, I would have to say the realizations that he gave us regarding the fact that it's not a traditional defeat for the British, particularly on the retreat from Lexington and Concord. This was, they were withdrawing.
Yes.
They were already beginning to fall back when things hit the fan. Now, he was very clear, this is not how they planned it.
No, it's not going well.
Right. And it was definitely a defeat, but they weren't driven from the field. What was fascinating to me was listening to how close it came to a collapse, though. How they were on the cusp of all of the structure breaking down.
They're running out of ammo.
They're running out of ammo. They're not utilizing their usual officers because they are not there. This is kind of a thrown together column.
Right.
And David's insights on the condition of that column, both going out and then coming back under fire, was very, very interesting.
I was moved in that segment of the story, also just hearing the amount of militia that are showing up.
Yes.
He uses the term provincial and militia kind of interchangeably, and that's a little nuance. We can get into that another time. Militia and provincial are different military designations, but we're talking about the flooding of these militiamen, basically to just show up at random along the British withdrawal back to Boston, eventually Charlestown. But I was thinking, we start the day with 80 or so guys at the Lexington Green, and then the Concord Bridge is 400 or so, and then it's 3,000 militia are showing up almost instantly, and you're like, whoa, that escalated quickly. And that's a pretty huge number for almost at any point during the American Revolution. I mean, that's a massive force. We stress that a lot with the Civil War and the First World Wars, that by comparison, the American Revolution numbers are
wee
tiny numbers. But that was a kind of
for the population, though. It was a significant amount of the population.
Absolutely. So, Parker, for you in cycle 2 of season 3, your favorite moment
of those
two, of those two,
Lechmere.
All right, so you and I share this. So let's do this now.
It's got to be Lechmere.
So we said this. So
I knew this was coming.
I mean, it was so random. It was so random. So David Wood. I don't know if he's a full-time metalhead or not, but he fell in line for a moment.
Yeah, he might be a metalhead.
So he's telling the story about when the British, crossed, to what is it, by
One if by land,
One
two
if by land,
sea,
two if
and
by
I on
sea.
the opposite shore will be.
Yeah, didn't I get in didn't I have that wrong live on the air? I was like, it's the one and the
I
two.
wasn't
and
gonna
it was-
mention that.
Yeah, I just
No, Mr. McGuire, you were accurate in all things.
Wow.
He really wants to stay out of the box.
Can I
right
get you a
now.
water? Water with lemon?
Please, sir, my feet are hurting me. But no, so they cross, they get across the river there, and they end up in a place called Leechmere, which he literally told us it's like the little
Swamp
pond
of
swamp
blood-sucking worms.
blood-sucking worms,
Right.
right? And I did the thing that I do where I interrupt and make it about something completely irrelevant. And I was like, as the resident metalhead on this show, I was like, that sounds like, one of the most metal things I've heard. And without missing a beat,
He goes,
David goes,
Leechmere.
Leechmere! I was like, what? I mean, I almost didn't recover from that. I was not expecting that. And then when I got to editing that episode, I was like, you know what I'm doing here? I'm doing it. And I dropped this brutal heavy metal snippet behind him, which further jokes for all the metalheads out there, because a few of them chimed in that they caught the joke. The song is by a band called Meshuggah, and the song is called Bleed.
The regulars crossed the Charles River to Leechmere, which means the swamp of blood-sucking worms. That's where you're going, guys.
I love heavy metal. This is the best part of the show so far. We're talking about blood-sucking worms. Let's go.
Leechmere.
Yes.
So they
But it is brutal. And when you play it right behind him screaming Leechmere, it's like, what? And if you see David's a good-looking dude. He's an older guy, but he does not look like a metalhead, right? He was wearing a sweater with a collar poking out of it, some nice khakis, and I'm here wearing a t-shirt. I got tattoos all over my body, some stingy beard, backwards baseball hat. I look like I'm in a metal band even today. So it's on brand for me, but out of nowhere, David Wood with the front man. Leechmere. If only would have been better if he went with the 80s. Leechmere! And had gone off with it. That would have been the best. But and it's a shame that that's my favorite moment, because he gave us some incredible information. And that's why I wanted to chime in with your talking about the withdrawal from Lexington and Concord, is that I was stunned by the amount of militia. But being honest, my favorite moment was when he caught me completely off guard with a moment of humor. And
That's what's great about the guests. They're always they're
my-
bringing the knowledge, but they're bringing their own fun to the show.
he came out of left field with that.
and that just goes further to show what a great guy, how kind and warm he was.
Absolutely.
And his schedule is super full. They're opening up a new exhibit up there. I should say they just opened it up by the time we've
Yeah, by the
we've been
time this is
talking.
out, I think it's open
It's
now.
open,
right?
yeah, and it's Alive with Birds, I believe it's called, and it's about
Alive with birds?
Alive with Birds, yeah, and it's a
Like, are they bringing Frankenstein style
no,
birds back to life?
it's a if I remember correctly, I think it is a line from a poem, I believe.
yes.
So and from a Mayflower, from somebody from the Mayflower, correct?
I don't know. I'm not a.
That sounds right, but I
Sounds
don't
like somebody
recall.
on your show should do some research on that.
Yeah, sounds like our producer
Get on that,
should
Parker.
get into a fact. So
No, but for real,
write
he
that
was,
down.
He was absolutely amazing. Carol was amazing, and if you guys are listening, and I hope you are, I look forward to going to Massachusetts again, heading back home to New England, and actually stopping in and saying hello to you guys, because you are amazing, 100% amazing.
Yeah, we can tell you, as the guys that host this show, we saw Parker just light up through this process, and that's why we wanted to make sure that he talked about it. He was very proud of it. We were very proud of him. It was a kind of a shot in the dark thing that worked out. Because we are, we're an up and coming podcast. We're not wee tiny so much that we're nobody, but we're definitely not a nationally known thing. We have a randomly huge
Yet.
following because we have a randomly huge following in Europe. Shout out to all of our listeners in the United Kingdom. You guys keep hitting the download button, and I keep loving you.
Yeah.
That's basically what keeps happening here, guys. So thank you for supporting what we're doing out there. But here in the
Got
States,
some Eastern European love too.
yeah, I know. What was the one we were talking about today? It was like Estonia or Lithuania. We were like, all right, thanks for listening, dude. Or dudette. It was one of those things that we know in the Europes, they get it, that the History Things podcast is History Things podcast is best. They understand. But here in the States, you guys, like, I'm just kidding. But no, we were proud of it, and we wanted to make sure you guys knew behind the scenes, that Parker put in a lot of effort in the shot in the dark. You got to take your chances. You got to shoot your shot. Parker shot his shot, and it worked out and got us a couple amazing guests. So let's transition into the second guest for quarter two here. We had Patrick Calloway, who That's the best first name in the history
Yeah.
of all first names.
Oh, you like that one?
Yeah, Patrick. It sounds good. Like I wish I was named Patrick.
I was gonna say, I wonder why.
It didn't get confusing at all in those email chains.
No. That's why I go
Which
by
Patrick am I talking to?
My former job that I thankfully quit almost a half a year ago now at this point. I had only been the only Pat or Patrick anywhere I go in my entire life. I get into my office and there are 3 other Patricks and they all go by Pat. And 2 of them are Pat M's. And I'm like, what is this life? But transitioning to you, my man, this episode did not just come out of nowhere. It did fall perfectly within the theme
Absolutely.
of American Revolution for Cycle
Sure.
2. But this episode was actually first brought up to us in season 1 conception mode.
Mm-hmm.
Like we were thinking about the first, couple of episodes we could do. And this is one you threw out right away. And I'll be honest, our listeners, for full transparency, I poo-pooed it right away because one thing I didn't want to do was turn our show into the main show.
Oh.
I mean, a lot of Parker's ideas are from where he's from, and that's not a knock. That's because that's the stuff he grew up around. He knows it the best. He's passionate about talking about it.
And they're the best stories.
They're the worst stories. No, I'm just kidding.
It's all logging and lobster.
Logging and that's why you want to go back to New England. You need some chowder, some lobsters, and some logs. And then I guess, do you guys count Vermont? You guys like maple syrup?
Vermont.
No.
Yeah.
It's like we don't claim Vermont.
No.
Skiing and maple syrup.
Yeah.
But this was one of the first episodes that we actually had thrown against the sticky wall of ideas. And we, again, for transparency's sake, we just didn't want to do it because we already knew we were doing White Star, which was, one of the main things that you were pumped up about in
and
life.
I think anyone will agree 7 hours with Parker is enough. Dawn, I'm so sorry. Kids, I apologize. Oh, good gravy.
Oh, my goodness. Dude, but
Seriously, though, Parker, tell us a bit about the Penobscot Bay
Oh, yeah,
expedition
okay,
and
so-
bonus episode. That
yeah,
we
tell
had.
us how that even came to be. Tell
So
us your connection to it.
All right, so I'll tell you, and this is going back to that conversation. I remember having this conversation. It was like, okay, so here's how it starts. My 10th great grandfather, I think it's 10. 10th great grandfather
Jesus.
was a guy by the name of
Literally
Peleg.
Jesus.
Yeah, no, he wasn't literally Jesus.
Oh, is 10,
Jesus.
10's not that far back yet? That's like 10,000th great grandfather.
Yeah. So, his name was Peleg Wadsworth, and from Massachusetts, and he is a general in this expedition. And one of my favorite kind of ironies in United States history comes out of Peleg Wadsworth. And Peleg Wadsworth is in this, he's in the Battle of Castine, or Penobscot expedition. And just kind of to recap here, there's four major generals, 4 major players, I guess, if you will. There's Saltonstall, Lovell, and there's Paul Revere, and there's Peleg Wadsworth, my guy.
And Revere was a great connection with what we'd been discussing.
Exactly. And so one of my favorite ironies in history is that the aftermath of this battle, of course, results in the talk of court-martialing Paul Revere, right? Which nobody really wants to do, and nobody actually ever does. But part of that court-martial talk, part of those court-martial conversations back in the day, stemmed from Peleg Wadsworth being the only commander, the only commanding officer that really whose kind of reputation kind of did not get tarnished by the Penobscot expedition, which was a colossal failure on the part of the American.
How do you think he
Navy.
avoids that?
Well, you'll have to listen to that episode and find out.
Ooh.
Nice.
So,
Very
Love it.
nice.
That was a good one.
hey, see, I'm always working.
You really want to get paid for this non-profit show.
Yeah, that's my
I
favorite
do.
part. He wants to get paid. It's like, wow, we don't get paid. How are you going to get
Listen,
paid?
guys, I want to address the listeners for a moment. They told me that if I can get this show nationally
told
syndicated
you. Okay.
Here we go. Listen.
within the next year, they would double my salary.
That's true. What is
And-
0 times 0 is...
And they're doing the math for me right now, and they're
Carry
telling me that the
one.
number is luscious. So
It's a solid number. Let's put it that way.
Is it solid or is it round?
There's a lot of
Is it-
zeros.
There's a lot of
It's a
zeros.
lot of zeros.
But no, for real. So
There's no other numbers involved.
there's no other numbers involved
Or decimals. It's
It
just
is a
zero.
one-figure salary. Mayans came up with it all on their own. The concept of zero. But no, for real though. So Wadsworth is involved in kind of the talks that are surrounding the court-martial of Paul Revere. Peleg Wadsworth has a grandson by the name of Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. who writes the poem, The Midnight Ride of Paul Revere. And what's really kind of cool is that while the grandfather kind of villainized this Paul Revere character, the grandson made him a national hero.
Turned him into a legend.
Like people didn't remember really who Paul Revere was back then. I mean, he was starting to kind of wane, I think, if you look at the spectrum. And all of a sudden, here Henry Wadsworth Longfellow comes with these alternative facts. Let's just face it, and these alternative facts about Paul Revere that may or may not ever have happened.
Our country is really pro William Dawes at this point.
Exactly.
Like nobody has ever heard of Paul Revere
or the other 10 guys who rode with William Dawes and Paul Revere,
or Sybil Luddington a year later.
Right, exactly.
So yeah, let's do a show about those guys.
I think she's 77. I think it's 2 years later.
Okay,
But
so anyway,
I
that was a conversation. So I felt really personally connected to the story because I grew up just a few miles from that, from those cliffs, from that coast. I went down there a lot. I always used to take my kids down there. There's Fort Madison, which Mr. Calloway talked about here in the show, and there's this cannon down there. I actually wanted to show you guys. I'll show you guys before I go home. There's a picture of kids playing on this huge cannon down there.
Awesome.
Anyway,
Get off the guns.
Yeah.
I know, right?
If you come to
These are
either
the
of
days
Matt and
before I
mine's
knew
parks,
park
do
rangers.
not get on the guns.
Yeah.
If you go to Matt's top secret site or mine not so top secret site in Western Maryland, if you show up and sit on the gun and I see you, you're getting the Stone Cold Stunner, aka me on the radio or my big voice, because I'm not actually going to hit you. That's not. We can't getting it done without guns since like 20 whatever.
Getting it done without guns.
That's like all park rangers.
All three of us, though, have been on Matt's top secret gun. We have actually all.
Wow, that sounds really raunchy, buddy.
That really does. See,
I don't know what you.
Is part
Matt,
of the
what audition did he have to do?
This is part of the national syndication.
Matt's quitting the show right now. He's filling out his resignation
No.
paperwork. He says, "I quit."
So yeah, so I felt I obviously felt really personally connected to the whole story, and the Castine Historical Society was amazing, and they reached out to me with their contact of Patrick Calloway, and working with him was also awesome. The unfortunate thing, and this is really the unfortunate thing, because I was looking forward to meeting with him.
Yeah, for you, bud.
For me, I had to work.
Yeah.
I had to, I had to work the 9 to 5 because the salary thing.
Yeah.
And I much would have rather have been here 100%.
Well, we work 9 to 5 too. We just have park ranger hours, which means our weekend is middle of the week.
Exactly.
Right, exactly.
When the rest of the world works.
So I got to listen, of course. I get to listen like right after it was done, and just an amazing storyteller, an amazing story. I love the fact that he brought up that he talked about the other part. I almost said the other fart, but the other part.
The other fart.
He did not talk about farts. My goodness.
That's what we do on mid-year shows.
That's the mid-year show. But no, he talked about the other part about that main history, which is the 1812.
That's right.
He talked about that.
There was a second Penobscot
There's a second Penobscot expedition.
Just
and
as disastrous.
So as much. So I guess I'll put it this way. I'm going to put the analogy this way. Everybody forgets the Penobscot expedition happened unless you live in Hancock County. Even the people in Hancock County forget that the Penobscot expedition happened unless you're a historian.
Well, you know who didn't forget it? Bernard Cornwell.
There you go.
He wrote.
That's true.
Was it The Fort?
The Fort.
And that features heavily in that book. So that that's a cool piece of what is that, historical fiction set in a real sort of atmosphere there.
And I found a letter. by Dolly Madison. I don't know if Patrick Calloway mentioned it or not, but there was some sort of mention by Dolly Madison in a letter somewhere where she was like talking about like the success like with what's his face Jones down there in the southern part of it. And he was like, I wish that he was ours. Like she wanted him to lead the Penobscot expedition instead of the
she was too busy saving everything in the White House while they were running away. So Parker, we're really proud of you, dude. You took 2 shots in the dark and hit 2 homers for us.
Yeah, you did.
I mean, you absolutely helped us land 2 amazing storytellers, which provided some amazing content for our listeners here. So
my pleasure.
I think the other thing I laughed about was in sort of hindsight was I knew nothing about Maine. My world, before I met you, Maine didn't even exist. It was
That's the way it always
is.
Too far north.
You know that meme Stephen King made up Maine one night during a Coke binge? Like, that's kind of how it was. It's not a real place for me, but I meet you.
I didn't know he drank a lot of Coke.
Yes, Coca-Cola.
Exactly.
He had a lot of caffeine. But
Wow.
no, the place just kind of comes to life when you get to know you, bud. It's like where you're from. You're steeped in the history and tradition of the place. You smell like lobsters pretty regularly, which
Jesus.
That's disturbing.
I've seen. And
you are passionate about your home state and its
I love
history.
Maine. I do love Maine. I miss it terribly. Hello, Maine.
But now that we know you, everything everything somehow falls back into this. First
Well,
of all,
Maine invented everything,
you are
so.
convinced of that fact, that Maine invents everything. We'll spare our listeners from the great whoopie pie debate today.
Yes,
But
let's not get into
it's
that.
Pennsylvania Dutch for everyone out there
It's
listening.
Maine. Look it up.
If you think it's Maine that
We
invented
did
whoopie
look
pies,
it up.
Yes,
we did.
and Maine put a ring on it and actually said, "Hey, we're gonna copyright this." Pennsylvania was like,
I guess
All
we're
right.
getting into it after
No,
all.
we're not. But here's what we're doing. We're throwing it to our listeners. So we need you to take sides. You could be Team Pat or Team Parker in the great whoopie pie debate. We will randomly talk about this. If you want to comment which team you're on, just hashtag the team you're on at random. It doesn't have, I don't even care what post you posted on. We could be advertising a random episode about, the air war and the First World War that we might do in the future. But you know what? Hashtag Team Pat, because it was invented by the Pennsylvania Dutch.
or you could see me in public and just give me a whoopie pie.
This is just a way for Parker to get snacks.
And you could just say,
Snacks.
We'll take snacks.
you could just whisper in my ear,
Team
and
Parker.
give me the whoopie pie, and I'll know. And
That's
then I'll
right.
let Pat keep believing he's correct.
But I'm
That's
like-
my job.
Like I'm watching, like a few weeks after we record this episode, I'm watching A Hunt for the Red October, and the movie ends in the Penobscot River.
Searsport man.
And Alec Baldwin's character does the most Maine thing ever, as I've been able to absorb what Maine people are like through Parker. There's this at the end of that movie, and he's there with Sean Connery, and they're standing on the con tower thing, and they're looking at the river and the wildlife and the shore, and Alec Baldwin literally goes, "It's right over there that my grandparents own a home. I grew up, but I spent lots of summers here." And I've literally heard Parker 1,000 times talking about some places like, my uncle here, my grandfather there. I grew up here. I went down this street there, and I'm like, every Mainer is about points of reference on a map. We're going down the street. Well, right over there is where Charlie hit the first home run in Little League baseball history,
Wow. Maine is one small town, though, unless you're from Portland.
which is huge.
Yeah,
Maine
it's
is a huge
yeah.
state.
Yeah, Maine,
but
though,
it's mostly trees.
mostly trees.
Well,
More moose than people, I think.
Well,
really,
you've had a
but
stellar first half of season 1,
Thank
bud, and
you
we
so
are
much.
amazingly grateful to you for
My
your
pleasure.
efforts here on the show. So before we get out of here, Matt, the train is leaving the station.
Yeah, it is,
We're
folks.
heading into the second half here, bud. So where are we going when we go to quarter 3 land?
Well, you're definitely going to want to get strapped in for this one, everybody, because we're heading back to the Western Front.
Oh,
In
my
particular, we're heading into the summer of 1916
oh no.
and the Battle of the Somme.
Oh, dear God.
We've got a great guest for you that's going to be talking to us about the Somme. It is actually Rob Enfield from British Muzzle Loaders. I'm sure many of you are
Ooh,
familiar
yes.
with his web channel.
Dude, he does amazing work talking about historic British muzzleloading weapons and their history and the battles that they take part in. He's got a huge YouTube account. So
Mhm.
if you were into the pew-pew sticks, the boom sticks, you've probably been familiar with his work. And he was recommended to us
Yep.
by a future guest of our show here. So that's a little top secret news. When we said we're doing season 4, keep your eyes out. There's something coming up. But that guy that we're referencing referenced Rob for us. I'm nervous to go to the Western Front again, honestly, because I know this story is going to begin on July 1st, 1916. And,
Right.
That's a terrible day, dude.
It is. It absolutely is. But Rob does a great job laying out the build-up
Yeah.
to this massive offensive that summer, and then, of course, the battle itself. And we get him twice.
Yes.
We're going to have both the main, sorry, Parker, episode, and then the follow-up will be the rest of the story. So it's going to be a great time, a lot of info as per usual. But stick around because we're going to have a really busy summer.
That's right. So you better like hanging out with us.
That's right.
Like, we really hope at this point, we've been doing this for 2.5 years. Like, if you don't like us by now, how have you not told us this? How have you just kept downloading the show and hitting the like button and sharing it with your friends? Like, why are you doing all this if you hate us? Well, guess what? I don't think you hate us
I'll
because
tell you
you've been
from
hanging out.
I'll tell you from firsthand experience. I've been hanging out with these guys for 2.5 years, and I think it's quite enjoyable.
Yeah, well,
I was
mean, you're
waiting
getting-
for that, and I hate them.
So was I. He's like, you know what? And I'm quitting right
How
now.
am I ever going to get my double my money raised
That's
if I say
right.
things like
Zero
that?
time, zero,
Can I get you some
carry
water,
one.
Matt? Can I get you some
Yes,
water? You
yes.
good? You good? Soda, water.
Yes,
good?
sir. I'd actually like a coffee, sir.
I'll be right back.
But no, the reason we say we hope you like hanging out with us is because we are going to try something new here at the show. We're going to be in your downloads a lot more frequently during the summer than we usually are.
Right. We've got some good stuff coming your way.
Yeah, some bonus episodes.
Multiple
We're not
bonus
really,
episodes.
Yeah, we're not really gonna drop them all here because we want them to be truly just kind of like, oh wow, but we just want to give you a heads up that Matt and I are men of science. That's why we do the Science Things podcast. Official rebrand happened right now. All we're going to do is talk about scientific theory and chemistry now. Wow. So if you like history, you better log off. But no, we because we are, men of science as a joke, but we do want to experiment with ways we can improve the show and grow it because it's all about, we're on a journey here, guys. And as the famous Clark Griswold said, it's not about the journey, it's about the destination. It's, the journeys usually suck. Except for our case, the journeys are awesome. And we want to tweak it to make sure that it's the best journey experience for you guys as well. So this summer, we're going to be hanging out pretty much. I'm not even going to tease it. We're going to be there a lot more. So you just look out for us in your downloads and make sure you're sharing the good stuff with your friends and listeners because as we said at the beginning of the show, we cannot do what we do without you. That rhymed. That should be a slogan.
That was excellent.
That should be a bumper sticker we do. Can we do that as a sticker? We don't do any merch. That could be the first one. But no, we love you guys out there in History Things podcast land. You guys have been the light of our lives for a few years now, and we look forward to much, much more shenanigans together as the years continue to go. So before we get out of here, the History Things podcast is sponsored by TR Historical, your one-stop shop for all your historical fan gear needs. Shop TR Historical. Use that promo code. Matt, what's that promo code?
History Things.
History
Save yourself
Things.
10%.
Parker, what's that promo code?
History thing.
That's right. One more time, buddy.
Main event of whoopie pies.
Jesus.
Go to TR Historical and use our promo code History Things. Get yourself 10% off. Like Matt said, there's no point paying full price for any of the cool stuff that Dave has available on his website. We are literally giving you a discount. You have earned it simply just by listening to this show. So there's no point in not using it. So, you guys hook us up with downloads and likes and you help us grow. We want to hook you up with some of your history swag. So make sure you, again, go to trhistorical.com. So following the History Things podcast on social media is another way to help us out. If you're looking for ways to help us grow, make sure that you are hitting the like button, sharing it with your friends and family, sharing it with that person at your office that you don't like because we know if you hate them, you want to make sure that they hang out with us because we turn everybody into a fan and we'll soften that knucklehead right up for you. So next time you meet at the water cubicle,
you'll have something to talk about.
Yeah, you'll have something to talk about like that Breakfast at Tiffany's film, right? Because you guys were doing that terrible joke this morning in pre-production. Oh, God. The stuff that happens behind the scenes here, guys, it'll make you want to quit the show.
I'll go back to the box.
But no, following us on our social media is a huge way to help us grow. And so that's Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. You can find us by searching at the History Things podcast. But if you are really, really looking for ways to help the show, Maddie B, how can our listeners do that?
We could use the reviews on any of those podcast apps out there. Leave us 5 stars and write a review because those are great. We love seeing them.
Make sure it's a good one, first of all. If you think this show sucks, do not leave us a rating or a review. If you think it sucks, just tune off and move on to another show. There's a million good podcasts out there. Yes, and live your life. Don't hate to hate. But Matt is completely right. 5-star ratings. Positive reviews, they are the name of the game in the podcast world. So we've been fortunate enough that a number of you have already helped us move the football forward. And we just want to make sure that you guys know that the signal is spreading. The work you're doing to talk about the show is working. The show is growing, and we just want to encourage you to keep that going. For all of you newbies, new to jumping on the crazy, we're not a flying circus, but we're like a crazy circus here. If you're new to the crazy car, the ratings and the reviews really help. So if you're liking what we're doing and you're going along on our journey with us and you're going to hang around, make sure you get involved and leave us that stuff on your favorite podcast app. Not just on your favorite. Go to all the podcast apps. Start with your favorite. And then go to your second favorite and your other. And go to other podcasts and write reviews for our show. That would be. I gotta unmute you. Did you hear that? Like, you could hear that through the background mics. I just killed Parker. Dude, we're gonna get Matt Callery and Avery and all of our buddies being like, "What the did you tell our listeners?" Team Parker's gonna start showing up on the Dressing Gettysburg podcast suddenly now.
Dressing Gettysburg's great, but
yeah, they're gonna be like, Matt's gonna be like, why are people not even listening to my show anymore? They're just bitching about what Maine did or did not invent. call it hijacking things, people. Look it up. But no, we love you guys. It has been a wild, wild ride here for the first half of our third season here. We look forward to sharing an immense amount of material with you for pretty much the rest of the year here. So buckle up, put your helmets on, sit tight. We're coming live in just a few short weeks. It's about mid-June right now, July 1st. Battle anniversary for the kickoff of the Battle of the Somme. We're going to take you there with Rob Enfield from British Muzzleloaders. So for our producer today, Parker Russell, for my co-host with the most, Matty B, I am your co-host, Pat McGuire. You have been listening to the History Things podcast. Buckle up, baby. Second half of season 3 coming up. We will see you later.
Have a good night.
On Facebook and Instagram at the History Things Podcast for all the latest news and exclusives. Make sure to also follow Pat and Matt on their social medias at History Things with Pat and at Matt Borders Books. Have a question, comment, or compliment for the show? Send us an email at historythingspodcast@gmail.com. Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed the show.